Alright, I got no guarantees that this thing is going to keep running. I had to get a protection order against a feller because he wouldn't stop assaulting me or my vehicle or throwing rocks at me. Now that ain't no guarantee that anyone's going to get what they want out of this. And it's unfortunate that I gave so many options for a way out of this for the feller. As far as a protection order goes, all that's doing right now is making it so that if he comes near me, he gets in trouble. Which is what should have been done with Tim Beeson and a lot of other people who have threatened my life and threatened my family's lives and my friends' lives. Most of those people aren't my friends anymore. We don't speak anymore. But that's not what this is about, is it? You might have noticed, first of all, that I'm not posting his picture up on this. Since the law is at least somewhat doing something, I don't need to post the guy's picture up. I do have a court date. It's not until way at the end of January. And here's what I want to bring up first of all. And yes, Scott Shaw, you are correct. By the way, I get the feeling you're the guy who called it into the police station and sent them copies of the videos. I'm assuming it was either you or the guy who calls himself Bicycle. Anyway, the first problem that I see here is that having to do it this way, Scott Shaw typed I was not, sir. Must have been other. Yes, sir. Must have been. Anyway, first of all, this guy needs to be able to go and get food. If this is the closest place by where he lives, it would be nice if he was still able to go here. Here's the thing, though, is that it was his bullying and incessantly doing so over and over again that resulted in him being kicked off the property here. It was his repeated threats, harassment, assaults, slander, and property damage that resulted in all the rest of this. Now, y'all know why I'm afraid to go to the police alone. This lady here was the one person out of everybody to recognize, yes, I need someone in person. For her, she was like, I told you, you needed someone to go in with you in person. She said that like probably 10 times today. I'm like, yeah, I've been saying that for 7 years. You're the first person to recognize it. A lot of the stuff that I bitch about, she's like, I'm not doing that, am I? And most of the time, no. And if it is something that she does as well, I'll say yes, sometimes, but not intentionally. The last video that I made was splotchy and blotchy, and it made it sound like 6 or 7 different situations that all have a moral to them, are all just one big glob just because there's a bad connection here and it disconnected at the wrong times. Now this feller, if he had the right information, he might have made the right decisions. See, his first response is always my last response. When I expose people on the internet, It's because that's the only option I have. This lady understands that going in with me makes all the difference in the world. And she was able to pick up and understand by the time we were down at the sheriff's office what it is that I'm capable of and what I'm not, because I shut down. I am scared shitless of those people. I'm a poor person. And judges know for a fact they can talk over us like we're dogs. How many of y'all sat through a courtroom when somebody had something important to say and the judge shut them down like they was a dirty dog? That's less likely to happen if someone is there. One of the things that the courts and the police will do, the DA will try to drag it out as long as possible. Because as long as they drag it out, they can try to use that as an excuse to prevent you from turning in any officers who might have done wrong. Like the officers who killed Demetrius Shankling, Elijah McClain. Having someone there who knows you and is familiar with you and understands that when you're scared, that's completely different than hallucinating things that are not there. You know? With all the situations with that feller assaulting me, kicking the hell out of my vehicle, slandering my name, and he didn't like it when I called him some of those names back. I get that. I don't like being called those names. I also don't like being assaulted by people who think that calling me those names somehow makes it okay to assault me. So this lady who's helping me, she's addressing the issue in the manner that actually stops the abuse, taking an active role in it. There's a lot of people who were dead over the situation. There's a lot more people who were a part of the situation that are just dead. You know? They're not dead because of the situation with Natalie Bollinger. They were just a part of the situation with Natalie and later did stupid shit like overdose. Like Christine Buhit did. Or somehow managed to break their own goddamn necks. Like Stephen McMillian did. Then there's a lot of people that likely were messing around with tainted drugs. People like Tommy Gallia. Then there's the ones that might have been beaten to death by their exes. And they might have had a seizure and hit their head, like they said. But they're still dead. Like Anna Hunka. Was it really a seizure? Or was she pushed into something? Out of all the people that I spoke with before Natalie Bollinger was killed, for that entire year, about the closest person that I had to a friend was Anna Hunka. She'd get a hold of me when she took a bath. She'd sit there and have a bubble bath and drink a beer, and we would talk like two human beings while she was having her beer. My friends in person, what did they want to do? They wanted to always change the subject. And that is the worst possible thing to do, is to change the subject. For a lot of people, they don't understand that when someone is going through a crisis, that's not a mental health crisis. When somebody is beaten over and over and over again, they're not having a mental health crisis. They're having an abuse crisis, which results in mental health issues. The first thing you have to do is remove that person from the abusive environment. Now, one form of dealing with trauma is drug use and abuse. Now, how do you get those people off of the drugs? Well, first of all, they have to want to get off the drugs. We all know that. Also, however, we have to get them away from the people who empower them to do them. The people who, when they're 3 weeks sober, will offer them a freebie just to get them to come back. They have to cut ties with all the old people that they knew, at least temporarily. The old boyfriend you broke up with 6 months ago that, well, he's still dealing and he still has access and he's still trying to sweet talk you. Now, this feller who's been stalking me here, he's not my worst stalker. Any of you who have paid attention to my channel, paid attention to the evidence and the messages, you guys know this guy isn't even near as bad as they get. I've had a few people on my channel notice that I got a black eye and want to make a big deal about a black eye. That's not a big deal. I get plenty of those. I don't bruise easily. It's not a problem. On my camera here, it's pretty, well, it's not high quality. There's been a couple of people who tried to attribute physical issues that I had done to myself, not intentionally, but they wanted to attribute those things to some of my abusers. And no, when I cut my head open on some of the stuff that was attached to my visor, I had one person ask me who hit me, and I said, nobody, I did it to myself on accident. And I had another person tell me, you should tell somebody that such and such did it. And I don't remember who it is they told me to say did it, but I was like, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. Anyway, I'm hopeful for a peaceful resolution. Now, if I even see him, if he's even in sight of me, apparently I'm supposed to call the sheriff's department or the police department or something, but, as long as it's just like the situation yesterday. Yesterday I saw him. Now, I did make sure I marched onto Safeway property as quickly as possible. He was riding his bike and he was listening to some headphones. I usually look at the ground when I'm walking, make sure I don't trip over stuff. By the time I looked up and realized it was him, I was already almost onto the Safeway property, and he's not allowed over here. As far as taking the stuff down that's on YouTube, the stuff that he wanted down, I would need his help to take that stuff down. He would have to help me by carrying my computer into the library every day and carrying it back down at the end of the day and listening to those videos, helping me to make them unlisted or change the title. And I'd give him the choice. You could change the title of it and change the picture on the front of it so it's not your face anymore. You could replace it with any number of the pieces of evidence that I've gotten screenshots. No problem. You can take your name out of it. You could even help me learn how to bleep stuff out of my videos and help me to make copies of them. Any of you could do that. In person, anyway. With him, though, he just not going to be able to get that opportunity now. There's a possibility if we're able to hopefully get a, what do you call that? An arbiter. We might be able to come up with a different resolution than him literally having to worry about in his own hometown that he's lived apparently for 30 years or more. It would be nice if he could go throughout the town without being afraid that he'll get arrested just because I saw him. That is a bullshit move, and it's horrible that he pushed me to the point that I had to do that. But you know, my predators did that to me in Chapel, Nebraska, in Boulder, Colorado, in Arapahoe County, Colorado, and Adams County, Colorado, and Larimer County, and Logan County. When they want you, and they will fuck with you everywhere you go. All those counties are in Colorado. How about Garden County, Dual County, Scottsbluff County, Cheyenne County? That's all in Nebraska. I don't want this feller to have to fear every single day that if I see him that I'm going to call the cops on him. Even if I'm granted a permanent protection order against him. That's still not something I'm going to do. I'm not just going to go calling the cops because I've seen him. I understand it's a small town. I will give him the opportunity to do what he should have done from the very start, which is walk the other way. If you don't like me, that's fine. Don't come and bully me. Don't slander my name. Don't go accusing me of shit that I didn't do. Don't go assaulting me. Don't go beating on my property. Don't be calling me anti-LGBT stuff. Don't be screaming the N-word at me. Don't throw rocks at my vehicle. Just go the other fucking way. There's lots of people I don't fucking like, and when I see them, I go the other way. There are lots of people in this town who have done horrible shit to me. But I see them now, and I am not as afraid. When I see Robert Farnsworth, despite the shit that he did, over a dozen times now, I have seen Mr. Farnsworth without a single negative incident, without a single harsh word out of him, without not even one scowl. I've seen Ashley probably a dozen times now since Scott went and talked with her. And Pun went and talked with her. And she doesn't scowl at me. She's even talked to me. Not in a mean way. And sure, she ripped me off for $20, but you know what? It could have been a lot worse. There's a difference between wrong things and bad things. And what's the difference? The people who are trained in de-escalation, people like the police, the people at TFCC, the people at Northwest Senior and Disability Services, as well as the hospital. These people are all trained in de-escalation. They're also well aware that when I'm trying to turn in abuse, they need to focus on abuse, not go out of their way to try to focus on, are you trying to hurt yourself or others? No, I'm not. Not ever. Well, Nez drops his arm. Every time he's going to swing, he drops his arm. He'll drop it down, make a fist, and bring it up and back and over. And that's how he does it nearly every time. It's a horrible way to punch. It lets people know what you're doing. Every time. It's telegraphing what you're about to do. With Mr. Farnsworth, he stopped. With Ashley, she stopped. Molly didn't stop. She was run out of town. Farnsworth kept his stuff up for about 2.5, 3 months. Like, it was a really long time that he was doing that. Ashley only kept her stuff up for about 1.5 months. Molly kept her stuff up for about 6 weeks as well. But that's a really long time. And with Molly, it was a situation where she wasn't going to any of the services. But then when she knew that I was trying to turn her into the police, she made sure she went to those services. Now with this feller, I didn't see him at any of these services. Until after he realized that I was going to them, and then he started showing up at them. And starting fights at them. And getting stuff just so he could throw it on me. That's not okay. Just because you heard a rumor. You know, I've been trying to get people to look at the evidence of the fact that it's bullshit for literally years. If you are one of those people who hates, well, anybody that you hear those rumors about, or make up those rumors about because you think it justifies what you're doing. If you really hate people that do that stuff so much, I am offering you the opportunity to look at evidence, verify evidence, and turn those son of a bitches in. There is no statute of limitations on hate crime or on sex crimes. When we're talking about crimes like, well, what do they call them? Heinous crimes. That would be sexual assault of any sort, whether it be against a child or an adult. Any sexual assault, there is no statute of limitations on. There's also no statute of limitations on sexual exploitation of a child. There is no statute of limitations on murder. There is no statute of limitations on corruption, abuse of power, abuse of position. When you hold a position of power, and you do something knowingly, willingly, and intelligently that you are aware is against the law, there are many, many, many charges that can be brought against you. If you have other people help you with it, you can get charged with conspiracy. If it results in someone being murdered, you can be charged with conspiracy to commit murder, as well as involuntary manslaughter. If you and your friends bully somebody into committing suicide, even a police officer and any other mandated reporter can be charged with manslaughter. Not involuntary manslaughter, but actual manslaughter. There's a difference between wrong and bad. What is the difference? Well, it comes down to what you know. A lot of these civilians that have all these ideas in their head and they want to say them over and over and over again, most of them have literally zero practical experience. They have no fucking clue what it's like. They looked it up on the internet and it says, oh, here's a phone number. Oh, magically this number is going to help you. Hey, Sean, I got a phone number for you. Holy shit, are you going to call the number with me? I'm tired of people having me call a place and then they want to argue with me over what was in the call. Meanwhile, they haven't heard the call, haven't listened to the call, and didn't make the call with me. So what good did they actually do? How helpful were they really? Now then, if we look at situations like the lady who helped me today and yesterday, and that younger gentleman who was trying to help me with the GoFundMe, it's obvious that they are trying to help me. They have invested a lot of time into that. And so have some of their friends and family. They don't quite understand why it is that I need to be able to sort through it the way that I need to. Once they start seeing how much there is, it'll make more sense. Once people are able to see it and I'm able to understand it, it does make a lot more sense. And prior to this, it was near impossible to get my friends or family members to listen to those videos, to listen to the actual conversations, to look at the actual evidence. Everybody just wants to sort stuff. Well, sorting it is fine, but I still need access to it. Most of it has already been pre-sorted enough times that I just need to be able to pull the stuff out of it and show you. It's already organized. No, I can't tell you specifically which one of those 15 bags something is in, but I can open up the bag and take a look inside of it and tell immediately what it is. I've already sorted it and pre-sorted it and pre-sorted it again and resorted it. It doesn't need to be resorted into dates. It'd be nice if it could be done that way. But the dates are already on it, which means that when it's written out and typed out, which I'm going to have to do again, but I have to be able to have access to my computer and a place where I can sit down and do that and have an outlet that I can plug into. No, I can't do it in my vehicle. And much of the point with folks is that they need to understand what I am actually capable of. The courts need to take a look at what I am actually capable of. And instead of exploiting my lack of funds, they need to stop wasting taxpayer dollars by sending me around in circles that cost me all of those taxpayer dollars that I'm paid for being disabled. I can't turn my disabilities off just to please you. If you make a mistake, yeah, maybe you did something wrong. Learn from it. Don't make excuses for it. You don't need to say, I didn't know. If it was a situation where I thought you did know, I wouldn't take the time to explain it to you. Obviously, you're a good-natured or a kind-hearted person. You've shown that. It's just hard, especially this day and age when everybody's fucking offended or feels like they have to get defensive immediately. It's difficult to actually communicate. And a lot of people, they're so busy trying to tell you they understand that later on it's a matter of pride. They don't want to admit that they didn't understand. Now, the one thing that was insurpassable and insurmountable, for example, with the feller who wanted to help me with the GoFundMe, I tried to explain to him how complicated a thing it really is. And by the time he understood how complicated a thing it is, and that I knew exactly what I was talking about with the issues that we were going to encounter, it was already too late because he'd already made those mistakes, assuming that I didn't know what I was talking about. No, the stuff that I know well. When I tell you something, it's from personal experience. And that's what most of the evidence shows, is personal experience. I've already been through it. I've already made the calls. They've already blown me off. And this lady who's been helping me, she absolutely understands at least the part about having to go in with somebody. Have someone help you to fill out the paperwork. Now, the part that is not so much coming up is the fact that I need her to explain to people that I literally can't function because of what's happened. I need her to be able to understand enough to explain them that. Now, because she's there, I'm not the same nervous wreck that I am when she's not there. And my communication skills are a lot better because she's there to hear it. Now, it's wrong to make mistakes, but we all do it. Once we've learned how to manage something, it's different. An example of something that's bad versus something that's wrong. Let's say you're horse playing through the house. You knock something off the shelf and it breaks. Or it spills and makes a mess. That's not bad. It could be very bad if it's something that's very expensive, obviously. But for the sake of argument, it's not something that's expensive. It's something that's arbitrary. Maybe a milk container or something. You know, it's no big major thing. So spilling the milk is not a bad thing. You did something wrong, it's easy to fess up to. Everybody makes mistakes. Maybe you were horse playing with your brother and both of you need to share the equal load, but you know what? You're the one that actually hit it and you're the one who fesses up and takes it. However, an example of something bad is blaming it all on your brother. Or even worse, your sister who wasn't even there. Those are examples of bad things. Trying to hide it. An example of something wrong is when you make an assumption. You've got these wild opinions in your head. And of course, you've got a misunderstanding of the situation that came from asking too many questions and listening too little. You're going to get things wrong. Like, let's say you write my last name wrong. That's a mistake. Oh, well. We all make mistakes. Now, if I point out that you wrote my last name wrong, and you tell me I wrote it that way, I'm going to know better. I've been writing my last name for years. And sometimes life happens. So, is writing my last name wrong? is writing my last name incorrectly, is that wrong? Yes, it's wrong. But you didn't do it maliciously. It wasn't meant to hurt me. It's just something that happened. No big deal. It happens. I'll get your name wrong, guaranteed. I try to learn one name per day. Otherwise, I get overwhelmed. So you wrote my name incorrectly. That didn't hurt me. That doesn't hurt me in the least bit. Now, if you were to insist that that was my last name and push it in the courts, push it to the police, make all sorts of calls to the media and say his last name is really spelled this way, well, that would be an example of something bad. When you do it this feller who's been assaulting me and harming me over those racist youngins at Tillamook Sporting Goods parking lot, what he's been doing is bad. It's very, very bad. He wanted to assault me, and he wanted to have excuses for assaulting me. And his excuses for assaulting me are things that did not happen and things that are not wrong. It is not wrong of me to speak up when people are harassing me and bullying me and hazing me and physically assaulting me and threatening my life and threatening my friends' lives and screaming racist shit, anti-LGBT shit, anti-Semitic shit at me in specific. As far as the trespassing thing goes, it only lasts for 1 year. But that 1 year is a pain in the ass. I can't go to Fred Meyers for a whole year over something where I was victimized. For Wolnez, it's bad for him to try to bully me over a situation he knows nothing about. It's bad for him to give false statements, false testimony. Those things are definitely wrong. They're also bad. They're all bad things. They're intentional things. Things that he thought would justify it if he decided that it was okay to put his hands on me. And that's not okay. I get that a lot of people are angry with me for speaking up. There's a whole bunch of people who pretended that I would hurt them because I said on YouTube that I was trying to turn them in. And because I said I would do things that are not illegal. Giving out phone numbers is not against the law. It's also not against YouTube rules. I don't give out any of these numbers with the intention of having people harassed or threatened or harmed. I give these numbers out to protect the American public from scammers. There are a lot of people's phone numbers that are not up. But if you're going to take advantage of at-risk adults, if you're going to take advantage of your position of power, you're doing horrible shit. When you're doing somebody who's disabled and you're running around and slandering their name and pretending that they're schizophrenic to try to justify the shit that you did wrong, to try to cover up the shit that you did wrong, it's not shit that you did wrong at that point. It is bad shit that you're covering up. Let's say you're driving down the street, right? Speed limit's 25, you're only going 23. There's two big RVs on the right-hand side of the road. And right as you're passing the first of the two, somebody darts out in front of you and you run them over. That was a wrong thing that happened. It wasn't an intentional thing that happened. There's literally nothing you could have done to stop that from happening. Also, anybody who's going to look at that situation with those two RVs, with your vehicle going by, if there's somebody who's going to pretend like you wildly were going out of your way to kill somebody, well, anybody who looks at the scenario is going to see that obviously you weren't out to hurt anybody. You couldn't see somebody in between those two RVs. There's no way anybody could. None of us have x-ray vision. So when somebody jumps out between the two into traffic, that's not your fault. That's a wrong thing. And it could be construed as a bad thing. I mean, somebody died, that is bad. But it's not a bad thing that you did. It's not a choice that you made. Now, here's where it goes from being a wrong thing that happened to being a bad thing that happened. The moment you pick up that body and try to put it in your vehicle and dispose of it, all of it's bad. Every bit of it's bad. And nobody is going to believe that you ran that guy over on accident because you tried to get rid of the fucking body. Wrong shit becomes bad shit when you do stupid shit. In the situation with Natalie Bollinger, for over a year before she died, before she was killed, for over a year, what did I do? I assessed the situation, and based on the information I had at hand, well, I made my decisions accordingly. I moved out of assisted living in Nebraska because I was pressured into going to Colorado to the Front Range to get help from people there. And that didn't end up happening. They did the same thing in Colorado they did in Nebraska. In Nebraska, I had housing. In Colorado, they wanted me to do a bunch of paperwork for housing there. I did the paperwork for housing, but none of the housing paperwork has ever stopped the abuse. In this one situation, this is the first time somebody has taken it upon themselves to actually look at evidence and help me to fill out the paperwork, to go in with me to the courthouse and to the sheriff's office. And look how smoothly it went. We went in yesterday and turned in some paperwork. They set me up to have another court hearing at 1:30 today. I went in at 1:30 today. And that lady went in with me both yesterday and today. And she helped me to fill out that paperwork. And although we had to do it without all that stuff in front of us so that we could write down exactly which video, what time in the video and all that, I do have it in our messages between her and I. It's a matter of taking one of my socks and poking a hole in it so I can hold a pencil for that long. I want you guys to look a name up. WAYLONLOLOTAI. Waylon Lolotai. I was assaulted by that officer, and I was charged with assault. And they held on to those charges and did not drop them until they thought they had a better frame job at Clearview. Unfortunately, Clearview got shut down for doing exactly what I said they're doing at Clearview. when I said there was a safety issue there, especially with their drugging policy and their lack of professionals there. I explained that they're going to kill somebody, that it was an emergency. It was something that needed to be turned in. Now, had I known that they had killed a man before I went there, in addition to the at least 11 people who committed suicide immediately after leaving Clearview, Clearview got permanently shut down by the state. So they just changed their name, hired on the same fucking people, and are doing the same thing. They killed another man recently. They changed the name to Johnstown Behavioral Health. It's in Johnstown, Colorado. When I tried to turn in Wayland Lolatai, as well as the hospital in Longmont, which are both Boulder County, they shipped me out of county to Clearview Behavioral Health to try to shut me up and prevent me from turning them in. But one thing that's important is stop pushing your idea that you got in my face. Yes, I know. I heard the first 30 times I agreed that it's a good idea. Yes, but we need to move on now. There is other stuff that you need to be aware of. And the first time through, which we've already missed out on. We've already missed out on that because people's ability to listen is not there. Now, there's a lot of people who are taught how to listen to somebody who's in crisis, somebody who has just been abused. That includes police, hospital workers, people at Northwest Senior and Disability Services. And these people and places are supposed to have a place for victims like me to sit down and do this ourselves. But they take all of our dignity away by not allowing us our own resources, by eating up our resources with false charges, false allegations. And this shit needs to stop. Now, the most important thing here isn't actually going in with me or helping me fill out the paperwork. It's hearing my story and allowing me to tell my story safely so that I don't have to be afraid that you're going to interrupt me over and over and over again until it's just a big mess and you're confused. And I have to sort it out by trying to tell you from where it started and tell the story as it happened until we get to today. When you only allot enough time for me to say a lot of people are abusing me, and then I'm not even allowed to tell you how I'm being abused or by who because you're already making suggestions, that's impossible for me to accomplish. If you have this great idea in your head that you think is going to fix it, and I say, no, please listen to me first, then I usually get the, oh, well, you don't want my help then bullshit. No. There is a legal way to do this. And that's the route that I've been trying to get people to take since before Natalie was killed. I've also been recording what it's really like living as a homeless person like this. You got two different groups of homeless people. You got the people who are addicted to something And they generally hang out with people who are addicted to the same thing. And even if they don't like somebody who's using the same drugs, they still don't want to burn that bridge because they might want those drugs later on. What do homeless people work together for? Do they work together to get homeless people unhomeless? No, I've had one group of people who did that. There was 7 of us in Boulder, Colorado who busted our asses to help homeless people get unhomeless. And although the majority of the time it ended up being some homeless woman who was pregnant, we were able to get a couple of men unhomeless too. Just there ain't no services for men. None. Not unless you're a felon. Now you get to see throughout my history that I've never been a violent person. The very, very, very few times that people pretended that I was violent with them, it was me being assaulted by Officer Waylon Lolatai, and then me being assaulted at Clearview Behavioral Health. Both times for trying to turn in the wrong shit that was going on. It wasn't about saving my life. It wasn't about protecting the public. It was about hiding their own wrongdoing, and you helped them to get away with it. And every time you push a suggestion, because we're strapped for time, and that's what you're doing, you are forcing me to make decisions at the last fucking moment because you're not listening. Listening is the most important thing. Pushing a suggestion over and over and over again until the victim gives in and does something that is against their best interest in the hopes that you'll give a shit. That is impossible. If a victim has to go through that, it doesn't matter how good-natured you are or how good your intentions are. You're bullying them, and they are scared. And they're not even allowed to tell you what you're doing is harming them because you're going to get defensive right away. And you're not going to listen to the part about how, hey, if you keep pushing this, it's going to hurt me. It's going to prevent me from turning in my predators. Stop pressuring me to do things that are against my best interest and find out why it's against my best interest. Don't wait until the last moment. Don't listen to my predators when you're not listening to me. How are you going to just listen to one side? Especially when there's evidence that you can see and listen to. I'm fine with you listening to my predators. But you need to look at evidence before making a decision about whether or not it's okay to victimize me. This guy that I have to get a fucking protection order against because he's assaulted me personally over half a dozen times. He has screamed things at me, thrown things at me, and beaten my vehicle at least 30 to 50 times in person. It wasn't people harassing me on the internet that were the problem before Natalie died. It was people harming me in person. And that includes some of those people who were harassing me on the internet. All it would have taken was for Natalie Bollinger to act like a grown goddamn adult, or for the fucking cops to act like grown goddamn adults, for Christ's sake. Y'all got no idea how many quote unquote professionals are recorded on my channel laughing. Very serious situations, and they can't stop themselves from laughing. And when people tell me, oh, dude, no, that can't be true, and then I sit down with them, if they're willing, and I show them the fucking video. And they go, holy shit, dude, that woman is seriously fucking laughing at you. That lady works where? First Steps? Where is that? And then I tell them, oh, well, why'd you go there? And then I tell them, oh, well, that makes sense. When it's all about the questions that you want to ask and pushing your suggestions over and over again, you're not listening to the victim. They're trying to tell you what's important and why, but you're busy with your own fantasy stuff in your own head, your own passing of judgment. When I say that I don't hate the people, I hate the situation, that's absolutely true. But that doesn't mean I'm not angry at any of these people. A lot of these folks knew what was going on and never once tried to go in with me to turn it in. Shannon Alvarado never once tried to go in with me to turn it in. Mandy Hughes claimed that she would, but she literally never tried. Alyssa Rainwater claimed that she would, but she never once tried. Graham Milbourne promised that he would, but he never once tried. Matter of fact, he was going to look at evidence, and almost 24 times or so, maybe more, when he was finally going to help me, finally had the time, an alcoholic needed his attention. Now let me tell you about the second type of homeless people while we're at it. The second type of homeless people, the ones that aren't on drugs, are not addicted to alcohol. They're not addicted to heroin. They're not addicted to methamphetamines. These ones are all on their own. Nobody's going to work together with them. Those people are going to get treated the same as those druggies are. Those druggies don't give a shit that they're making things bad for everybody out here. What they care about is getting their drugs. And they will work together to make sure that they still have access to their drugs. It doesn't matter if you're a pretty 19-year-old girl like Natalie was when she was shot in the head, or a 40-something-year-old like John here in Tillamook. You may have good intentions. Many of these drug addicts, you can hear it in their voices. They do have good intentions. But the reality of it is they're still addicts, and I have to pay attention to that part. Because while they may have the intention of coming through and helping you out, they're going to start coming down off of their drugs. And then all they're going to be able to think about is their drugs. And they're going to panic if they don't have access to their drugs. And they want to go get those drugs immediately. Then when they're on the drugs, they're too fucked up to do anything helpful or useful because they're fucked up on drugs. You get to hear John on my channel talking about how he wants to help, but also he doesn't want to cut off his druggies. He doesn't want to cut off his contact because he is, in fact and indeed, a fentanyl addict. By his own admission. Now you get to see the situations where I had homeless people help me. Actually stopped. Because homeless people helped. Homeless drug addicts, matter of fact. Robert Farnsworth stopped because of homeless drug addicts. That's who I had to go to try to get a stop put to that, because none of the people at churches were doing anything. None of the cops were going to do anything. Northwest Senior and Disability Services wasn't going to do anything. Tillamook Family Counseling Center wasn't going to do anything. What's the difference between this lady who's making mistakes because she doesn't know any better and these so-called professionals who are trained to know better, yet they do it anyway? Well, this lady made some wrong decisions, whereas these services are making bad decisions. This lady didn't intend any harm, whereas these services are already aware that them not doing their jobs does, in fact and indeed, result in not only long-term harm, but repeated and ongoing. With the way that the news media and these web sleuth groups played it, I will be targeted no matter where I go, no matter where I move. See, the internet isn't your local paper. The internet is worldwide. Natalie Bollinger was not my victim. I was hers. And her friends. They were the first type of homeless, despite the fact that Natalie Bollinger herself was never actually homeless. Neither was Alicia Bollinger. But they did have the druggy contacts. Because by their own admission, and by court records, Natalie Bollinger, Alicia Bollinger, and Maddie Boa all sold drugs to homeless people. Which homeless people in specific was it who were harming me before Natalie was killed? It was very specifically Maddie Boa's customers, at least in the beginning. In the 3 or 4 months just prior to Natalie Bollinger's death, well, in that 3 or 4 months, it became more than just Maddie Boa's customers. It became a lot of people that I know. And a lot of people I don't know just recognized their face because I'd seen them before. But they knew who I was. And these people at the very beginning told me where they were hearing these rumors from. Maddie Boa, Maddie Boa, Maddie Boa. Then there's the evidence that shows that what Maddie Boa was saying wasn't true. And the evidence that I let Maddie Boa know that I was being harmed. I let Maddie Boa, Alicia Bollinger, and Natalie Bollinger know that I was being assaulted. I gave them my phone number, my new phone number, specifically with the intention of them having the police call me. Like, hey, I'm trying to be an adult about this. Now, it took 7 months. That's right, 7 months of people threatening to kill me and threatening to kill my friends and threatening to kill my family, calling me up at all odd hours of the night, making up fake account after fake account to fucking harass me, including fake accounts in my friends' and family's names. Sorry, just my friends' names at that point. Over and over and over. 7 months of that, 7 months of assaults, 7 months of threats, 7 months of having to spend way too much time by myself with no one to talk to. Meanwhile, the people that did want to come talk to me are all fucked up on drugs and drug-induced schizophrenia, basically. Like, no, I don't want to hang out with you when you're all fucked up on meth. You're fucking paranoid all the goddamn time and you think everyone's out to get you. You don't think right in the head. And I got to worry about, even though you want to call me brother, call me fam, that the moment I turn my back, you're going to be going through my backpack for whatever it is in there you think you can fence for a few bucks. I got to worry about when you say you're going to help me that I'm going to have to spend a whole bunch of money because you're always broke. Well, you're not too broke to make a phone call if you're able to call me. You're not too broke to look stuff up if you have internet access to play your video games. Yeah, there was a lot of people who promised to help me, and then they said they couldn't use their internet. Meanwhile, they're playing online video games on their telephones. And with some of them, it was offline video games, but they were still addicted to their fucking screen. Wanted to play Candy Crush Saga, and like with Kayla Trujillo, she wanted to play some word game. Well, all right. But if you're going to help me and then I have to wait for 6 hours while you play your word game, and you tell me, oh, well, I can do two things at once, and then you through everything I say, and then I ask you one question, and you can't answer that question. So I ask you 2 or 3 more questions to things that I literally just answered. Kayla Trujillo, she was just way too busy playing that word game. Now, this lady today that went in with me, that's what Kayla Trujillo should have done in December of 2016. She should have listened to me, looked at the evidence of what was going on, and helped me to turn it in. But she was insistent that they needed food in the house, so I went out and panhandled up food. They were really into Magic the Gathering at the time, so I was able to panhandle up some to get some Magic the Gathering cards. That was the closest to a Christmas present I could give them. The problem wasn't that I wasn't trying to get help, because I absolutely was. And the problem wasn't that people weren't offering to help, because there were lots of people offering to help. The problem is they were offering the wrong kind of help. I needed help turning in people who were physically harming me. What I got was, you just need to love yourself. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Why don't you just give it to Jesus? You know what, Sean? You just need to give it to the universe. Why don't you just move on? Have you thought about moving somewhere else? Why don't you just get away from those people? None of that gets me heard by the police or by the courts. You know what does? Going in with a friend or family member. The lady who went in there with me today, she knows at least a dozen of the witnesses to the situations just with this one feller. She just doesn't realize it. Yesterday, one of the ladies who was there for a situation told this woman about the situation. And the feller who was trying to help me with the internet stuff, one of the other fellers who was there for me being called the N-word, told him about the situation. So the two people who want to help me, who have insanely good intentions, I mean, they really, truly do have good intentions. But this is their first rodeo for a situation like this, which means they're going to make mistakes. They're going to do stuff that's wrong. And you know what? That's okay. As long as they admit that they did something wrong. That's not the same as saying that you did something bad. Especially when you're not trained. You know, sometimes you do wrong stuff because you don't know any better. A lot of times when you're doing carpentry, there's tricks of the trade that you don't know on your first day. Now, let's say you just dropped a tree and you got it cut into 18-inch sections, 16 to 18 inches anyway. And it's already felled, it's on the ground, it's already cut up. And you got a skid steer out there, or a skid loader, with a bucket on the front. And your job is to get those chunks of that tree into that skid loader. Now, if it's your first day, and the other folks want to razz you a bit, they might have you grab the logs that are the furthest away from the skid loader. The point of having a skid loader is to make the job easier so that you don't fuck up all your workers' backs in the first week and then they won't work again. So going and getting the stuff that's furthest away from the skid loader is the wrong way to do it. The best way to do it is the stuff that's right in front of the bucket. You have them pull the bucket right up to the logs and you roll them in. And then as he backs out, you've cleared a little bit more space. So next time he'll be able to pull in a little bit more. And you roll some more logs on. You leave the ones that are the furthest away alone. You'll get to them. It'll go a lot faster if you're not waiting for somebody for 30 minutes to grunt with a big-ass log over the top of a bunch of other logs into the bucket. It wastes a lot of energy, it wastes a lot of time, and you've got the guy in the skid loader sitting there going, fuck, dude. I'm going to go to lunch before we get to dump the first bucket. So yeah, you're doing it wrong because you don't know any better and because the other workers are just being assholes to you. But your boss is going to say something, or the other workers are going to go, all right, enough razzing this guy. All right, so here's what we're supposed to do. And now that you've done it the wrong way and have exerted a lot of energy and are sweating like a pig, you're going to be glad we're showing you this trick. You see how he pulls right up to it? Yeah, he's only 2 inches away from that thing. All we got to do is tip it into the bucket. You see how easy that was? Didn't take 30 minutes. Now, when you've got that guy who's wanting to show off for the ladies and he decides that after he's been cutting trees with you for a couple of years, he already knows the routine. He already knows how to make it easy. But he's decided that he's going to try to impress maybe the daughter or the person who owns the house. You never know. When you're working on a construction crew, especially a summer construction crew, you might have 16-year-olds working with you. I was 15, 16, and 17 when I did roofing. So I was pretty young. Anyway, the situation with these other things that are happening, I try to explain to her one story at a time so that it doesn't get complicated or too complicated. But she asks questions that span multiple jurisdictions and multiple issues. And that takes a little bit more explaining. That's why it's better to approach it linearly. How did it happen? In what order? I make mistakes too. I make a lot of them and I admit them right away. Because I have to. There are too many lives at stake for me to fail. The evidence is more important than I am. My evidence is more important than my life. And that's because it shows the truth of what happened. Not just with these people here in Tillamook, but also in Clatsop County. It shows the situation in Hood River, the situation in the Dalles. It shows the people that I went to for help. What they did instead of helping me, and how they played it off when I tried to turn them in. It shows that the police would rather believe slander and make decisions based on slander than look at any actual evidence. The world changes when we make it change, but in order to make it change, you have to be the change. When you're only going to work together so that you and the other alcoholics can get yourselves a handle of vodka, or you're only going to work together so that you and the other fentanyl addicts can get another bump. And I'm going to call it that. I know that a lot of fentanyl addicts find that insulting. But it's basically what it is. The alcoholics will work together with the other alcoholics to get alcohol. The meth addicts will work together with the other meth addicts to get meth. The heroin addicts will work together with the other heroin addicts to get heroin. Those are the groups that work together in most social circles, believe it or not. Hell, my mother was part of a women's Bible study that was never a Bible study. These were church-going women who needed a quote-unquote break from men. And what did they spend most of their time talking about in their Bible study? Men and sex. I've never in my life heard such foul-mouthed women as my mother's Bible study group, women's Bible study group. I even remember who was in the Bible study group. People like Rhonda Knudsen Rust. And God, what was her name? Angela Black. There was about 5 or 6 of them all together, and they didn't go to all of them. You know, there was only usually 3 or 4 that went to each group. Me and my older brother had to go upstairs. My little sister wasn't allowed to be a part of it either, and because of the topic of conversation, you understand why. Obviously, I'm not out to hurt anybody. I didn't just go out and threaten anybody at random. The only people that I actually threatened were the ones who threatened me first. And Donald Trump. But that was a last-ditch effort. I couldn't think of any way to force the FBI to take a look at this stuff. The FBI was already involved in Natalie's case. And 2 of Natalie's stepmothers were encouraging me to go to the FBI, and I was trying. I did my best to try to find their head office and show them the evidence in real life, in person. But I didn't have anyone to go in with me. I had people who wanted to give advice. And advice doesn't help turn in the crimes. Advice doesn't stop predators. Advice doesn't stop physical abusers. Advice doesn't stop rapists. Telling the victim about a situation that is long since passed and is over now, instead of listening to the problem that is very real that they're having right now, that's harmful. And it betrays their trust. Every time that they try to tell you something important and you interrupt them to start making suggestions, you're not allowing them to tell you what's going on. Your suggestions are based on your understanding of the situation, but how much do you understand when you're busy making suggestions? And when you start getting pushy with those suggestions, and I'm telling you, hey, there's a legal route that needs to be taken, and that's the route that I'm trying to take. How about we go that route? That means when a crime is committed against me, I go to a friend or family member, and it doesn't matter what state they're in. I am a disabled and at-risk adult. This situation is federal already because I'm disabled and because it's happened across so many different jurisdictions. It is absolutely federal. The fact that police officers who committed crimes against me later did those exact same things to others and ended up in prison for it, or ended up killing other people with it, shows that the situations that I'm in do need to be taken seriously. That instead of pretending that I'm schizophrenic for telling on Waylon Lolatai for assaulting me, that you take it seriously. That instead of pretending like I'm delusional for telling you about Clearview Behavioral Health, holding people for longer than they should, taking advantage of their patients, and injecting them with drugs at the request of who? Nobody who's legally qualified, that's for certain. Police officers cannot legally diagnose you with schizophrenia. And when you are forced to go to police officers who have already committed crimes against you, to turn them into themselves, that is an obvious and clear violation of the law, because it is a very clear and obvious conflict of interest, such as Scott DaCosta, Waylon Lolatai, Amanda Jonas, Jared Hahn, Cody Selhorst, making us go to our predators to have them investigate themselves, only results in retaliation. You can see that with Amanda Jonas. You can see that with Officer Waylon Lolatai. And Scott DeCosta's not any better. When you try to turn in police and you are forced to turn them into their own departments, the only thing stopping them from giving you the mentally ill treatment is a friend or family member who gives a shit. Good to be rid of you. Thank you for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and your sister's keeper too, and no victim left behind. Thank goodness folks are helping me to turn in some of this stuff finally. Actually using their voices finally. We're not getting very far, but I'm doing my best to be mindful of other people's families, other people's living situations, other people's working situations, and other people's illnesses. I just wish that people would try to accommodate my disabilities the way I try to accommodate theirs. Also, Scott Shaw, you can go ahead and message me now if you want. And one more thing. To all the people at Safeway, whether you understand or not, I want to thank you all for being nice to me. I want to thank you for your kindness. Although sandwiches don't stop abuse, I am glad that I get to eat, especially given the safety issues in nearly all of the places that they feed homeless people. Because they don't discern one homeless person from another. Yeah, they'll feed us, but if there's a safety issue there, if there's people there who have been predatory towards us, they'll feed those people too. And although I'm fine with those people eating, I'm not fine with being assaulted on that property and having so many people look away. Here's the thing about drug addicts. If you're not a drug addict, you're not allowed to stand up to the drug addicts out here because they and their drug addict buddies will make your life a living hell. Thank goodness I've been able to get somewhat of a decent reputation with a lot of the drug addicts out here, despite the fact that I don't do drugs. Why? Because I treat them like they're people. I take the stuff to the internet that you won't listen to in real life. I'm thankful for the people at Safeway who have looked out for me, and some of them got to hear the good news today, and it's good news for me, but it's not good news for the feller who pushed it far enough it had to come to this. I wish that the lady that was helping me today, I wish I'd have had just one friend before Natalie died who was willing to try that instead of talking over me about sparkly universe bullshit. And the Jesus will fix it bullshit. Reminds me of the story of the person in a flood and 3 different boats go by. You know, that situation, those boats are there to help, right? Get into the boat. Well, that's a great idea if you're a person. Not such a great idea if you're a fish. Something that may be helpful in one person's situation may be harmful in another. And it's important to find out what those situations are before trying to push someone to make a decision that's not good for them. Especially when they're trying to explain to you what's going on and why it's a bad decision, and you keep on pushing it. Some of these things, it's not a matter of just simply turning it in anymore. It's about turning things in the right order. I could have gotten a protection order against and that feller. I could have gotten a protection order against him the first day that he did that if I'd have had somebody that was going to go in with me. There was a woman named Miriam who was here that day. She could have gone in with me and helped me to fill out that paperwork, and we could have been done with it in less than an hour. I knew her from the First Christian Church, which is one of the places I've been assaulted more than once. And I also knew her from Starbucks here in Safeway. She's not here anymore, but she said she would try to turn it in before she left. She was also really super nice. She also very much seemed to understand the situation of having to rely on people who can't stay off of the drugs or alcohol. Having to rely on people who are temperamental because of drug and alcohol use. That comes from living in a town like Tillamook. You really can't get away from it. A lot of people here in Tillamook talk about how there didn't used to be this big of a drug problem here. Well, drugs are a lot more prevalent. They're a lot cheaper. Things are getting more expensive, and there's a lot more homeless people. There's also a lot more people having to crowd together, more people per household than ever before, because they can't make rent otherwise. Anyway, like I said, good to be rid of you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper, and your sister's keeper too. And no victim left behind. Now, who the hell is out there? I can barely hear somebody out there, so that means you guys probably won't be able to. There's some of my videos. I've got an external speaker I had to buy because it'll amplify the sound a bit. There's a lot of stuff in my videos where if I just play the phone, I can barely hear what people are saying, but with the speaker, it's amplified. It makes it so that I am able to hear it. But with whoever's out there talking, I can barely hear their voice. Although after having said that, I should probably get out of my vehicle and verify that there is somebody, in fact and indeed, out there talking. Because if I don't, you'll pretend I'm just making it up. They're closed here, and one of the guys who works at the customer service desk is talking to, looks like either a customer or someone who just got off shift, or maybe somebody who's on break, because they don't really have to wear all the Safeway stuff when they're just stocking shelves at night because the store's closed. The most disgusting part of all this, though, at this point, is all the people who want to pretend that it's my fault that other people didn't want to do their jobs and did everything in their power to try to not have to do their jobs. It shouldn't have been Miriam's job. If a church is going to talk to us about forgiveness, well, they also need to talk about safety and protection. If you're just going to let people be harmed, well, those people aren't going to want to join your congregation, especially not if they actually believe what Jesus taught. Because that's not what Jesus taught. Before you try assigning anger as a negative emotion, keep in mind we have anger for a reason. It's a perfectly acceptable emotion. And acting on that emotion is perfectly acceptable under the right conditions. If someone's trying to drown your child in a bathtub, yeah, getting angry is probably the right response. Talking nicely like it's no big deal and just letting them drown your kid, probably not the right thing to do.